Hey there. Thank you for coming back. Today I'm talking with Paul Stryker. Paul, he's a UXD recruitment manager. He works for TEKsystems and manage the product design recruitment effort for TEKsystems clients. Clients such as Facebook, Amazon, GM, and most of the big FAANG and enterprise tech companies, as you call them. He's an awesome recruiter, and personally, I worked with him, and I know firsthand how much he care about the candidates he work with, as well as the companies and the clients he support. So I'm really excited about this conversation. So please enjoy, and let's dive in. So I just wanted to jump in and maybe we can start with a little bit of introduction. Specifically, how did you get into UX design recruiting, and what you love about it, what you hate about it? If you want to also share, that would be awesome.
Sure. Like a lot of people in this career, I kind of fell into it. I had no idea this was a career until I learned about it through a friend that was working at TEKsystems. I had a lot of the soft skills that they tend to look for in a recruiter already, just from years of experience working in hospitality. Working as a bartender, you are required to build rapport with people that are standing on the other side of the bar from you very quickly. I worked in restaurants and bars all the way through college. So I had some of those soft skills, and it is a pretty fast-paced environment, which I tend to thrive in. And that's for recruiting in general. I've been here at TEKsystems for 9.5 years now. Recruiting specifically in UX for a majority of that. I think I was drawn to it because I do have just an affinity for both the creative and the logical uses of my brain. I was just more interested in UX and product design in general, but that's also where we had the biggest need at our company. We were building this division that specializes in creative and design recruiting. We're a 41-year-old company, but our division that specializes in creative and design recruitment is only about 9 years old, which is when I started with the company. So that's where we needed the help. So it's a combination of my interests as well as what the business need was. And you had asked, what I like about it. I love that I get this insight into everything that's happening with these top technology companies. Our customers are all the name brand companies you've probably heard of a million times, all the FAANG companies and all the other acronyms that are out there. So we get to hear about all these cool things that are going on and being on the bleeding edge, because we're looking for the people that are going to build these products of the future. So we have to know a lot about them. We have to know how to get people excited about them. So that's one thing I love about this job. The other piece is, which is probably the most fulfilling, is that I get to make a direct impact on someone's livelihood and helping them find a career that helps them achieve their personal goals, helps them support their families and themselves and the type of life they want to live, helps them find a job that they are passionate about, that also, helps them achieve those goals. So it is very fulfilling. At the end of the day, this is kind of a sales job, but I believe it's a lot more than that, given all of those other things that I mentioned previously. In terms of what I hate about it, I don't know that there's much I hate about it. There's some customers that are very particular about what they look for, which can be a lot of frustrating back and forth and expectation setting with what's realistic and what you can find in the market in a great candidate. Yeah. So I wouldn't say I hate that part, though. It's always an interesting challenge. They're long hours, but that's kind of part of the game when you're in this type of role that's customer facing as an agency, which is what TEKsystems is. So other than that, there's really not anything that I can say I dislike about the job.
Yeah, challenging customer in tech, like that's and design specifically, that's unheard of. No, just kidding. It's part of the job for sure. It's awesome that you mentioned 9.5 years experience. That's actually a long time in tech, 3 years. So I'm really curious, about the market or the job market trend and gets to specifically for UX design. My videos is more specific on SaaS and enterprise design too. So if you want to dive into that, that would be great. But in general, like what are the trends you have seen went through the years and maybe the upcoming trends that we will be seeing in the near future?
Yeah, the trends are heavily impacted almost as a symptom of what's going on in the larger market, the job market, as well as just what companies are going through in terms of their budgets. You know, there was the year of efficiency, so to speak, coined by, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, where everyone was trying to figure out ways to run leaner. And I feel like we're still kind of there, with one caveat that I'll throw in at the end. But I would say it's harder to specialize than it was a couple of years ago, to be really, really deep in, let's say, SaaS enterprise design systems specifically, right? Like, you know, that's something you're super familiar with. But what I'm seeing is our customers, the hiring manager, is looking for someone that has a broad skill set that can jump in on many different points through the design process. Maybe something's already built and they need to audit and figure out how to make this use case work for a different user or something like that, right? Or maybe they're building something 0 to 1, or you might have one designer doing both projects, right?
Yeah.
So having a really broad skill set as a product designer is going to help you right now versus having a really, really honed in specialty.
Yeah.
That being said, our customer does like to see someone that can jump in a variety of areas in the design process, can do visual, can do design systems, can do prototyping, but they do want to see someone that has some sort of superpower or specialty, right?
Design for
Yeah. So highlight your superpower, and we'll get to, you know, the part about how to navigate this crazy job market, but really highlight the things that you have a lot of experience in, while also relaying that you can do a lot of things, but this is the thing that I'm the best at. Because, like I said, all teams, all companies, all design teams are being tasked to do a lot more with a leaner, smaller team. But it's always great to highlight something you're really, really strong in. Like, let's say you have a lot of strength in e-commerce as a vertical, right? Or prototyping as a skill. Like, that's something you're really, really strong in. Just make sure you're highlighting that, because our customer does want to see that. In terms of, you know, other trends outside of just doing more with less and being broad, you know, I think the portfolio being the most important part of your job seeking repertoire, and we'll get to that again when we talk about you know, how you can stand out as a potential candidate. But I'm so much emphasis on our customer, the hiring manager, needing to see the work. You can't just have it on your resume. That's got to be something they can see, and see your thought process and see your approach, see the actual delivered final production quality visuals, right? Like, that's something I'm really wanting to see. Whereas in the past, when there was a demand for product design talent that far outweighed the supply, you could probably get away with just having that experience in your resume and not necessarily having it live in a full-blown case study on your portfolio. But there's just a lot of competition for the best jobs right now.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of competition for the best designers as well. So I would say the top, you know, 25% of product designers in terms of experience and skill and background, they're still getting a lot of offers quickly, you know, but for everyone else, you got to do things to stand out. And I think, you know, we'll get to that in a bit.
Totally, yeah. Maybe going back to the trend topic, like, and you mentioned you work with some teams at Meta and Facebook, and I see also a lot of teams there's focus more and more on AI and machine learning. So maybe if you can share your experience around that topic specifically from a recruiting perspective, but also from a design opportunity perspective, or as AI is taking over UX and UX have no future in the world of AI, or is it just a supportive tool that you can use along the way in your portfolio and your resume.
Yeah, I think we're a long ways away from AI displacing product designers. I don't even see that in the near future. I think there's probably gonna be a world where AI can generate screens from a design system. I think that's maybe in the near term.
Yeah.
But in terms of a product designer being a business person and thinking through how to solve a user's problem, that's not going away. I would say in the much more shorter term, the developer's job, like a front-end developer, even a back-end developer, you can generate code with ChatGPT now, and it's pretty easy. But from a business lens, like zooming way out, a lot of our customers are shuffling around their investments to put more money into AI. I think that's no secret. So some of the teams that have traditional revenue streams are going to be running a little bit leaner. And then the teams that are building out features that use AI are going to have more investment. I think that's all pretty, self-explanatory. So that being said, if you are a product designer, I would encourage you to just think through how AI could be used in the products you're building. You don't need to use AI to build them. I think, like I said, we're far away from the machines being able to think through that process, because it's a very human process. We're humans interacting with the interface, right? But if you are a product designer, that is a trend we're seeing, that we're getting more and more requests for product designers that understand how to use AI for these different applications. And when I say application, I don't mean a piece of software. I mean like applying it to the use case, right? So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question around the AI?
Yeah, I think that's great. That's I just wanted to make sure that you have that space to share all your insights. From my own experience, I would say like that is absolutely true. Like just understanding how AI can be part of the design journey. How can you design for AI or using data that is generated by model machine learning? I see it more and more like needed I would say in the job market, which is really awesome. So maybe if we can go back to your advice or insights for product designers. I'm hoping maybe talk first about a seasoned designer who is trying or having to go back to the market at the moment with, unfortunately, the tough tech market, I would say, that we're in. We experienced a lot of layoff in the past. Maybe touching about the advice for them, what do you do they can stand out? And also insight from a company perspective, like how their shift from are they hiring, they're going back to hire contract versus full-time? Are they hiring, like you mentioned, one designer to do the whole teamwork or have a more minimal design approach to it? So I think that would be great if you can share more insight on that.
Yeah. So hitting on the first question around a seasoned designer unexpectedly maybe going back into the job market. The biggest thing we run into is those designers have not had to build a portfolio in a long time. And not just a portfolio that you use Squarespace for that has some general tiles and, it's like, here's the work, right? The candidates that really stand out are the ones that are designing their portfolio with their own style in mind. And it doesn't mean you have to be a visual designer. There's a lot of places you can get inspiration from, portfolio websites, things like the Webbies or Awards have great newsletters that send out like cool UI and micro interactions that are really fun. So the more designed your portfolio is, the more unique it is, the more it represents you, the better. And you've got to have your most up-to-date work on there. And I think not enough designers, especially the seasoned ones, are taking assets from their current job to build that into their portfolio later. I've heard of some people like, I got laid off yesterday. I didn't see it coming. I don't have any of those assets, so I can't build a case study around it, and then they have to go and ask their friends for it. And, that's always tricky.
So that's a good point. So what will be your advice for these specific people who don't have the real assets of the design that they created, and it could be like years of work? Like how can they handle that in their resume and portfolio?
Yeah, I think the resume I think you could just summarize. You might want to be a little bit more thorough in your explanation of what you were doing if you don't have the case study to show.
Yeah.
I would lean on your friends, lean on people that you've worked with at that company that might still be there to send you some of those assets if that's kosher. Like some companies are not going to be okay with that, but most, as long as the product is launched, is fine. And if the product is live, you can at least take some of those visual assets, from the actual product. But if you just can't get those assets, I've seen some designers build a very abbreviated version of that from scratch. And it might not look exactly the same, but it at least shows your thought process and your contribution to the product. It might be dummy data. It might be totally scrubbed. That's fine. What we're looking for, recruiters and hiring managers both, is what did you do and how did you think through it? Who were the different stakeholders that you worked with?
Yeah.
What was the end result? Like, was there a benefit to the user or the business? Probably should be both, right? For a successful launch of any new feature, right? So taking it all the way through what the problem was, problem statement, all the way through results, with even dummy data, dummy visuals is fine, as long as we can see the thought process.
Yeah. Yeah, so that makes sense. I think in my own experience as well, for myself and other designers that I give advice to, I mentioned even leaning into the process more. That's a good approach, because at the end of the day, this is what you want to highlight and show in your portfolio. It's easy to kind of show the UI or the end product or recreate it, like you said, with dummy data. I think this is very awesome. Thank you so much. So maybe the next question, or the other side of it, is the newcomers, like someone who is junior, just started out of college, trying to get into the UX industry and tech industry at the moment. Any helpful insights and advice you can share with them?
Yeah, there are some websites where you can put yourself out there to take on volunteer work. Of course, when you come out of school, you're probably going to have some case studies that were maybe a passion project of yours, that you could build out an application for. I would take that through all the way, to prototype stage, at least, maybe even test it out, or at least have a piece in your portfolio of, if you could test this product out and do some user research, what would that look like? And what do you expect the results would be, right? Just so a hiring manager can understand, yes, this person knows how to do some user research after the product is launched, and this is how they would do it. But I would also put yourself out there to take on free work. Like, I hate to say this, but you might need to work for free so that you have case studies on your website that show that you've worked in a real world constraint, right? You've worked in an environment where there's a stakeholder that you have to make happy, and you also have to make the user happy, and you also have to work within a certain budget and a certain timeline. These are all real world things that a personal project is not going to have. So I would recommend taking on any volunteer work. Nonprofits are always looking for folks like this. There's websites like Fiverr, Upwork, where you can find projects like this. You can even put in your portfolio some of the design assessments that you may have had to do for an interview.
That was a really good point about adding an assignment to your own portfolio, because personally, and other designers can tell, you spend sometimes a lot of time and efforts to do these projects, and it's always good to know when you think that you can use it to your portfolio. So I think it's a good call out that you mentioned that, for sure.
Yeah, and additionally, just networking, putting yourself out there, especially right now, those entry level or internship type of design jobs, it really helps to have some sort of advocate in that company, someone else keeping an eye out for opportunities like that for you. So the more people you have like that in your corner, the better. So go to these meetup groups. There's different forums and communities online where you can find groups like this. Things like this podcast is probably a great place to do that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, really put yourself out there to network and seek out some mentors.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just going back to we don't like to advise on taking any free work, especially for design. You shouldn't be getting paid for your design work, but with all reality, with all honesty, and in the reality, we all have done it. Like designers, we had to do. Even I would say, companies and agencies, sometimes in the beginning, we had to take on a project for the exposure and for building the portfolio and the real life experience. So I think that's also one of the really good advice that I just want to call out and repeat again.
And it's not always going to be like that. You know, we're in a unique job market. I think it'll bounce back for sure. And maybe it's not free, but maybe you're giving a heavy discount of what you would normally expect for that work. So
yeah. I have another question also, like maybe we didn't discuss it before, but any advice or any thoughts about designing for startups specifically? I know, I'm not sure if you have a background in also recruiting or working with startups. And if you do, like, what would you see the difference between hiring and working with startups versus big, like giant companies, like the FAANG companies?
yeah, I mean, you have a lot more autonomy and ownership, which can be a good thing for some people and a little bit of a challenge for others. There won't be people to lean on within the company. So I would recommend you make sure there's mentors that you can get feedback from outside the company. There, with that extra autonomy and you being probably the only designer at this startup, unless you're working with an agency or a partnership with someone else, there's just a lot more ownership and responsibility on you to deliver, right? And that can be sometimes stressful or sometimes energizing, depending on the person. So I think that's the biggest difference right there. It's going to be a lot more fast paced. There's probably going to be a lot more unexpected changes as well. Sometimes the whole business model could change and you need to rethink your design process entirely. I think presentation skills are so important when you're working with startups as well, because sometimes you're going to be pitching to VCs to get funding. You might be a part of that process. So not only just being able to present your design rationale in a way that will positively impact the business's bottom line so that you can get the money to go and build the thing. You also need to be able to design a presentation that really shows that work in a beautiful way, because that does make a big difference as well.
Where do you see the opportunity there for designers to getting to more into the leadership perspective? Like you mentioned, in a startup board, you have more amenity, we have more space, more leadership role. You can be in front of VC. So what type of the skills you would say that they need not to be comfortable with, but kind of gain, work on and develop themselves to kind of be better on in design leadership in general?
Yeah, I mean, the presentation piece is huge. When you're going to learn that in a startup environment.
Yeah.
And that's something you'll definitely carry with you into every job going forward. The ability to persuade using storytelling is half the job, I would say. So that piece is probably the biggest that I would say. Also being able to work efficiently with your time. Startups are crazy. They're always trying to hit incredibly impossible deadlines. So learning how to work efficiently is another skill I think you would take from a startup into a larger, more matrixed environment. The third one that you might not always gain at a startup, but I think you can, is the ability to navigate a very large and matrixed environment. But when you think about what your matrix looks like at a startup, it's probably pretty small internally.
Yeah.
But if you think about your matrix being all of the external stakeholders, like the VCs that you're trying to get money from, or maybe the partnerships that you have that are giving you mentorship, like through an agency or something like that, I think then you do learn how to navigate a much larger organization. But that's something you're going to want to consider if you interview from coming from a startup environment, going to an organization that may have a bit more
That's a good point.
red tape, bureaucracy, approval processes that you have to get through to get stuff done.
Yeah, different department you have to work with, and and include in the design process. Maybe going back to the design leadership approach, I would say, and specifically navigating the different department and enterprise, how would you think um, the role of a designer going to be evolved? If there's any trends that you see, or not trends, the changes in the job description, not specifically label and title, because I think I made a video about that like long time ago. We have a lot of titles, but at the end of the day, is the job description what forces you to actually know exactly what you'll be doing in the job. So where do you think the job of a designer is going? Specifically, I would say in an enterprise side of things, big companies, and the startup world or two, if you want to share on that.
Yeah, I have much more experience on the enterprise side, and I can say that there's going to be less support overall. There's less like project managers, producers, design program managers that are there to support you and kind of project managing your own work.
Mm-hmm.
So having PM skills as a designer has become a bit more important than it was in the past, when there was a lot more budget to go around to hire a PM, a coordinator, someone that can just organize the chaos so that you can do your job as a designer. So what you are doing as a designer may just expand to include some of those things that are maybe less fun, like setting meetings to talk through timeline and budget and scope. You may not always have a creative brief given to you. You might need to go and build that yourself, and then, let's say at a big enterprise company, you've got a producer. That person will often be helping with the sales pitch piece to go and gain buy-in from other stakeholders on different teams.
Yes.
Hey, I need some resources from you. This is what you're going to get for those resources.
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of build that case on your own. And that goes back to the whole storytelling to persuade skill that you're going to need. And I think that's true on the startup side as well. But the people you're trying to convince are probably different. You've got less overall stakeholders. It's primarily going to be the CEO, the VCs, or one thing that might be different in a startup though is you might be leveraging outside agencies to get work done. So project managing and QAing the work of those agencies, could be a big part of your job that wouldn't necessarily be part of your job in enterprise.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The design, I would say design lead and the strategist or lead designer role kind of becoming more and more evident, the need for it, and you end up doing more of a, not necessarily people management, but project management as you're doing also some of the design lead work that you're doing. It's good and excited, I would say, exciting to see these roles also exist, becoming more and more common. Maybe one more question, or at least from my side, one more question, and I hope that I'm not putting you on the spot. Like, where do you see the market getting better and a lot of good UX design jobs coming back to the market, if you see that coming?
Yeah, we definitely have, my portfolio. So I have a list of customers that I specifically support, and then I have a peer of mine that supports the rest.
Yeah.
My portfolio is heavily technology.
Yeah.
And I've been very busy. So I think where we're seeing the jobs is in the technology sector. And, the opposite of that, or, the things that don't fall into that are things like retail, healthcare, finance. Whereas during like peak COVID, healthcare and finance was very stable. But now it's still kind of just flat, whereas technology is kind of taking off as people make these investments. CEOs, executives make investments in AI or trying to get ahead of the curve with these emerging technologies like XR, AR, VR, AI, things like that, hardware devices, things like that. So that's where we're seeing most of our open roles come from, is from our technology customers. Outside of that, it's different departments that are leaning into these technologies within our retail, healthcare, finance customers. So the other place I'm seeing job openings is teams that are trying to build an AI solution for their financial customers, right? Or media and entertainment companies that are leaning into augmented reality or virtual reality. So designing an experience for Disney on the Vision Pro or the Quest that's for gaming or watching a movie or navigating one of their applications, something like that.
Awesome. Well, it's great to hear that jobs are coming back, and this is exactly why I wanted to talk to you. And I just want to really thank you so much, and I really appreciate the time you're giving us and also the advice you're sharing. So thank you so much again for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great to chat with you. Take care.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you for everyone who is watching. Hopefully this will really was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.